Like Emily said, my name is Alexis Els, or Lexi Els. Technical difficulties. So a bit about me, I'm from Sutton. I'm a sophomore. Things you might see me doing around here is leadership committee, PF chairing, not anymore, Catholic Students Club, SoCo chair, tours, ice skating, so definitely active in the community, inside and outside of West. But when I went to NASCO, there was 4 freshmen. I am the only one presenting here today, but we did present together in the spring. So Molly is in Southampton right now, but Jack and Julian also went with me to San Diego. So when we were in San Diego, we had 6 people living in one house. So we had 4 freshmen, 1 junior, and 1 senior. We had a 3-bed, 2-bath house. It was kind of good. We were 10 minutes from the yard, so it was a quick commute to work. Didn't have to get up early. So that was a positive. We also had full kitchen grill. We had 2 cars, and everything that we wanted to do was about 15 minutes away. So that was awesome. The boys went to the gym every day. The girls, we went to the Y. And we looked at a lot of boats and tried to really get out and see the community. So you can see some pictures there. We went to some coffee shops. I found a coffee shop with some bunnies in it, which are cute. There's a funny story that every year a house will find a dog. We were the house that found a dog, which was kind of roaming, and she was really cute. But we did also find her owner, so bittersweet moment. Also, we got to enjoy the lovely food of San Diego, so lots of different cuisines, but definitely a lot of Mexican food, tacos, burritos. We cooked during the week, which was awesome, so our senior loved to grill, so we always had some good steaks, chicken, fish, really whatever we kind of wanted, and we would cook it up and go to Costco and get a lot of food on Sundays. We also did a lot of hiking, so we went to different little spots. So we saw some slot canyons, we saw Potato Chip Rock, which is the one where we kind of look like we're sitting on a ledge. After work, we'd go to the beach a lot or go down some hiking trails for a little while. The positive of working at NASCO is, positive and negative, I guess, is your day starts at 6:30 in the morning, so it's kind of early, but we were done by 3. So we had a lot of time to explore and enjoy the rest of our day while the sun was out. We also got to see Joshua Tree, which was pretty cool. So we were in the desert for a day. We got to hike a lot there, climb some rocks. It was a good bonding experience. That was the first weekend we were there, so we really got to enjoy that as well. And then there's just some more pictures of different things we did. We saw the USS Midway and things, and other ships, and Sunset Cliffs, and La Jolla, and so many different little things. We also got to go to an alumni meetup, which was pretty cool. So we knew a few of those people because they had come to Webb previously. But other than that, we got to meet a lot of people, had some really good food. One of them invited us back to their house a few weeks later to do a seafood broil, which was awesome, really good seafood. And yeah, it was a lot of fun. And then 2 parents of Webb alums also took us out to have pizza and their version of Bronx pizza. But it was actually pretty good, so I can't complain. Finally, here's the shipyard we worked at. So while we were there, they had 2 different types of ships going on. They had the ESB Expeditionary Sea Base, typically used for the Marines, and they also had the TAOs, the underway replenishment, which are underway replenishment oilers. So we got to see ESB 6 and 7, I believe. So those are cool because we got to see 7, which was already 6, which was already on the water, and 7 get floated out. We also saw ESB 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. 3 and 4 were in the water. 5 is being near completion. We just learned that today actually they're launched number 5 into the water. Number 6 had half its hull done. And number 7 was in just production stages way in the beginning. So, yeah.
Lexi, what's ESB mean?
Expeditionary Sea Base. So they're typically used for the Marines. They have the first 3 in their class are able to submerge and pick up heavy lift ships. And then the government was like, this is too expensive, so we can't handle this anymore. So they decided to remove some of that equipment and just make them flight decks. So they're now flight decks that can be moved as well. This was where me and Jack Pryor spent most of our time. So we were in accuracy control. control. While we were here, it was kind of interesting because accuracy control is not quality control. They basically are trying to figure out where in the yard things are starting to go wrong and how far the ship will be off when you put it together. Surprisingly, or not surprisingly, when you put a ship together and you put your Legos together, the Legos don't fit well at all. So you end up with pieces of ship that are about 8 inches off, and they have to kind of fix that. So accuracy control works on trying to fix all this, and NASCO just won the contract for an additional 9 ships, I think, to build with the TAO, so they'll be building these for like the next 13 years or something like that. So by the end, they'll be very good at it, but they're still learning right now. During our time in accuracy control, we got to see SOCs 1 through 6. So our first 4 weeks were spent in accuracy control, with week 3 being weld engineering. So we got to do the basics of welding, which you can see up there, which is awesome. And then weeks 5 and 6, you're in SOC 1 and 2. So a SOC is stage of construction, and that means that in 1 and 2, we were seeing the robots that were doing the robotic building, the robotic welding, as well as some still hand welding. And yeah, and then week 7, we were in metal outfitting, which was pretty cool because we had a variety of supervisors and got to see different things every day. Things like testing procedures when they're testing the mooring lines so that they don't snap, and also finishing the little things. I arguably had the best day of my life in week 7 in regards to winter work, because we got to see a naval inspection of all the ammunition boxes and ammunition rooms, so that was pretty cool because we were like seeing basically how these ships are built to run. And then week 8, we went back to accuracy control, did a bit of data entry, or for me, puzzle building, because one of my coworkers kept giving me a puzzle to do. And other than that, we were measuring deviations and parts to make sure that there was no major errors, and then also watching how when you put that into the data entry system, parts of the ship would show up red as it's continuously being wrong every time, and they're seeing a pattern and trying to fix that. Molly was in electrical outfitting. Unfortunately, she's not here, but briefly on kind of what she did. She was more in SOC 4 and 6. She got to do a lot with ship systems, the fire detection alarms, the whistle. She did a lot of cable laying. She got to see a lot of the inside of the ship, that the inner workings, how they're setting everything up and laying everything out. And we also had Julian, who was in mechanical outfitting, who did a lot with pipe, so he was all over the yard. Some days we'd just see him sitting on a block, we'd be walking around and they'd be like, oh, hey, Julian. But it was a pretty good experience for him as well, where they got to do quite the variety as well. There's some more pictures. He was in 3, 4, 5, and 6, quality assurance and tests and trials. If we had been there an additional 2 weeks, I think they would have let us go and see trials, which would have been pretty cool. But unfortunately, we had to come back to web. Other than that, does anyone have any questions? No? Here's a fun little clip. San Diego got the most amount of rain they've seen in a very long time, so we actually almost got an entire week off of work because the yard flooded and the pumps in the dry docks and everything weren't working, so everything is underwater. And the graving dock was, looks like a primordial soup with just floated forklifts and a bunch of other things going on, which was not great, but no. All right.
Hello everybody, good afternoon. My name is Andrew, and this is Everett, and we're going to be taking you aboard the STOLT effort. Okay, to start off, here's an overview of what we'll be talking about. We'll start by talking about our arrival, and then cargo operations, our departure, the many detours we took, life at sea, an incident we witnessed, and our time in South Africa. So, starting off, the STOLT effort, it was an Innovation class ship. It was a chemical tanker, and it was 25 years old. It was the last of its kind, and by that I mean it bankrupted Danyard, which was the shipyard that made it. So this ship was equipped with all of the newest, most expensive bells and whistles available, and because of that, the yard was unable to complete it in time. And so it's actually unfinished. It's missing a deck house, a garbage room, and a low temperature cooler, so nothing important. Our arrival, we flew into Houston a couple of days before Christmas, and an agent from Stolt picked us up. It was kind of like a movie. He was wearing a black leather jacket, he had sunglasses on, and an earpiece, and he was holding up a sign that said Stolt Crewmates. So that was pretty cool. Also, everything was paid for, which was really nice.
So for the cargo operations, we were able to witness plenty of the cargo operations for the first 2 weeks or so because we were in port. So for the first week, we worked typical 4 on, 8 off ship shifts with the guys on deck. So I was on the 8 to 12, you were on the 4 to 8. And basically you work 8 to 12, both 8 to 12s all day. So you work 8 to 12, you have 8 hours off, and then you work the next 8 to 12 as well. It sounds nice, but it really isn't. Most of the time, spent in port, we spent bunkering, loading cargo, so cargo in, cargo off, so we had plenty of time to witness the cargo operations for our project. Christmas, we boarded before Christmas, so we spent Christmas in port in Houston. We enjoyed a wonderful Christmas dinner with the crew and officers. You can see we got lobster tail, shrimp tempura, beef Wellington, you know, they pulled out all the stops for us on Christmas. I mean, it was tough being away from our families, but they did a really good job at helping us feel welcome and at home with the new guys on ship, which was much welcome. So the Panama Canal at the time did not have sufficient water to support ships, and so we planned to pass through the Suez Canal. Panama Canal is filled with local waters, so during severe droughts, all the lakes dry up, and all of a sudden now we have no water for the canal. So we were basically directed towards the Suez Canal. However, this was around the time which I believe it's still going on, where the Houthi rebels are drone striking ships. So we were told that it was highly likely that the Houthi rebels will attack highly unlikely that the Houthi rebels will attack our ship because we are not American or Israeli connected, which is mostly true.
Yeah, so highly unlikely, expanding upon that, they said that we had a risk lower than that of dying in a car accident, of getting bombed. And that's, that's not exactly what we wanted to hear, being on a floating bomb. But they did also reassure us that 4 to 5 Stolt ships pass through the Suez Canal every day, and that the only possible way our ship was attacked is if a drone misfired at us, which probably wouldn't happen because it only happened to 2 ships that so far at the time. And so we departed toward the Bermuda Triangle. We spent New Year's on ship. This is the feast. We had a traditional Filipino New Year's feast, complete with an entire pig, which was crazy. It was really, really good. Not something I would have tried before ship, but you gotta try new things on ship. So. We also opened presents with the crew. Like Everett said, we felt very welcome. We watched the clock turn over on the bridge, and we also saw some fireworks over the Bahamas, and that was an unforgettable experience. I really wish I took some pictures. There were cruise ships parked all around us, and so, I mean, that gives you an idea of how cool it was, because people are paying to be there. We were getting paid to be there. Also, an update. At about 3 weeks in, the US and the UK decided to team up and bomb Yemen in retaliation for the halt on shipping. So on ship, we learned that the missiles to intercept the drones that the Houthis were using cost over $1 million each, and that even though a drone didn't cost that much and multiple were being fired and they had a very low chance of even hitting a ship, the US still had to use 1 missile per drone at least to take care of all of these. So it was not economical for the US to defend these ships. It's actually more cost effective to just let them hit 1 out of every 7 ships. So the US countered this by bombing Yemen, and this obviously raised the stakes. So was it still safe for us?
So on our way to the Suez Stolen Effort stopped 6 hours from Gibraltar about 4 weeks into our sea term. So basically, like exactly where that star is, pretty much, is exactly where we stopped, pretty much. We were stopped for 4 days, 4 extremely long days, and during that time we went fishing and had a barbecue, which is pretty much unheard of. You can see up here, they had some fresh caught squid. It was delicious. Probably, like, according to them, it was one of the first times they'd ever caught anything off the back of the ship. Just take reels of fishing line and then throw it off and then hope that somehow something bites, and it did, which is insane. But in the end, we were thankfully redirected to South Africa and not to the Suez Canal. So when we neared the equator, just going down the coast of Africa pretty much, the ship's coolers stopped being able to cool the ship. Once the ship is cooled with seawater, so once the seawater gets to like 80, 90 degrees, all of a sudden the heat exchange is a lot less efficient, so it was getting a lot hotter everywhere. The water was way too hot, so the engine room was probably over 100 degrees for sure. It sure felt like it was over 100 degrees all the time. It was pretty much unbearable, so working was really difficult when it got as hot as it did, but we still got a good amount of time. We took frequent coffee breaks so we could kind of cool off a little bit.
This is a video of our ship rolling. Some days were worse than others. This was a pretty decent day. We ended up encountering 7-meter seas at our worst point, which is pretty heavy. It was in the northern seas, so it was hard to sleep. I mean, imagine you're like in your cot and then you roll over. It's like, whoa. But we didn't get much sleep, but less time you spend sleeping, the more time you get for your sea term project. So we shifted to the day shift, which was awesome. No longer a 4 to 8. It was now an 8 to 5, like a standard 8 to 5. The work was pretty good. It was mostly a grunt task, but we did learn a ton. We got to read a lot of manuals. The crew was very helpful in explaining what they were doing to us. And we also got to do something pretty cool. We got to make a new CAD drawing for a coupling flange for a cooling compressor. So the original coupling flange got bent, and they didn't have the drawing for it, so they had us recreate one so that when they were in port, they could have it machined. And that was pretty cool. We spent a lot of time on that because it's going to be a multiple $1,000 part, and we were just two cadet interns, so I hope it was right. Didn't put our names on it, we just wrote Web Institute. So.
Oh my god! Yeah, so here you can see this was in the workout room where the ship's like rolling like crazy. That wasn't like stage or anything, that was just how it was. I like to run the treadmill a lot, and the treadmill was kind of oriented fore or aft, so like every time the ship like rolls, like you roll forward, like you roll one way and you're like getting thrown forward, and then you roll the other way and it's like you're running up like a 60-degree ski hill. So that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, something else about it is all the workout equipment was oriented in like a certain way so that to account for the roll, which was pretty cool. And also they had Smith machines, which are where there are walls like for benching. Because you imagine you're benching and whoa. Something else that I did a lot was play basketball with the crew. They had a court on the deck 11. And it was very fun. I didn't realize how much the Filipinos were into basketball. Pretty much our entire crew was Filipino, and some of them had the craziest shots I've ever seen. Like their form was really weird, but it always went in, and it didn't matter where they were. They really admired that I was tall and that I could dunk, and I made a lot of friends very quickly when they figured out I could dunk. They also called me a moonster, which is awesome.
So food wasn't always what we were used to, but most of the time it was honestly really good. Not probably not what we were expecting from ship food. We were probably expecting it to be a little worse. So you got flounder, all kinds of fish, steak, like it was delicious.
Toward the end of our journey, we encountered some excitement. So we were told that there was winch brake testing one morning, and so we went out to see it, and we were also told to stand back about 10 feet because it was dangerous. So basically, there's these winches, and they have a 120-ton load, and you want the winch to release if it exceeds that load, because the worst thing possible would be that the rope that it's attached to snaps, because the amount of force on that rope snapping could cut someone in half if it went backwards. And so they were testing to make sure that once it reaches that 120-ton load, it would give. And during that, our chief officer stuck his hand under the thrust block, which is shown here. And the way it was positioned, there was a stack of pipes and shims, and there's a thrust block on top of it. And you can see right here the marks from whenever this was pressed down against the shims. And so he had his fingers right here adjusting it, and suddenly it activated and he lost 4 of his fingers. He was wearing gloves, and when it happened, he pulled off his gloves and just bits of bone and flesh just flew over the deck. It was crazy.
So we had to take a detour, obviously, to drop it off. So we had to drop off the chief officer along the coast of Liberia for treatment. Probably not the best ideal place to receive medical treatment, but it had to happen. So he was picked up in just a rib. They came with like 4 Liberian Coast Guard guys, came up in a rib. We rigged up a special ladder for the chief to come down. The whole process probably took like 10 hours or so.
A rib is rigid inflatable boat.
Yeah.
And here's a picture. Just kidding.
We were good. There were some pretty cool sights to see. So you can see this is just the ship went up at night while we're on the way. Ship in the morning, along the way as well. And here is the final path we took. Probably not the most optimal way to get to South Africa from Houston, but you know, that's good. That's just the way the chip fell. When we arrived at South Africa, it took absolutely forever to get into port, which is 3 days. But it was the longest 3 days, probably that we have ever experienced. And the pilot eventually came by helicopter, which was super cool. That is the helicopter that came to pick them up. It probably took like a minute probably for them to get the pilot on there, but it took 3 days for them to send the helicopter in the first place. And after a long journey, we eventually arrived in South Africa, and you can see that's just a picture of us getting off the ship. Then after disembarking, we need to go through immigration and customs in order to catch our flight home later in the day. Some of the other guys on the ship wanted to stay to see the sights of South Africa. We were okay with not doing that. So you can see, just going home, once back online, we had a very easy time adjusting. You can see right there is one of the monkeys that was in port. There were all kinds of wild monkeys in port, only in the port, weirdly enough, but they were mobbing everybody. If you had food, they were coming after you. Durban was a lot different than the United States. There was trash everywhere and no running water or electricity. It was, we kind of take things for granted here in the United States, but they have it pretty bad in some of the other places. And we bribed immigration by putting money with our passports. So our agent told us when we were in the port that we could either get through immigration the normal way or his way. And his way involved giving him 10 USD apiece, which was the way that we chose to take. And it took a lot less time than it typically does.
Yeah, so our flights back home were very long. We flew separately. It took me almost 30 hours to get home, and I ended up getting a middle seat, of course. When we got home, we finished our C-term projects and took a well-needed rest. So Thank you, Stoll. We love this experience at sea, and we learned a great deal about life on ship and how things are run in a successful business. But most importantly, we learned that plans change. Even when told it would be 4 hours before that helicopter would come, it still took almost 4 days, and it just emphasizes how flexible you have to be in this business.
And thank you to Webb for helping us get home safe, all in one piece. Everyone at Webb made sure to keep us in the loop, and that's what made it a big success. So thank you to Emily, Dean Warner, and everybody who helped make it happen. So thank you to everybody. That's it.
For the freshmen and sophomore parents who are scared right now, this is not a typical C term.
That was important to know. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to my presentation on my winter work experience. A little bit less invigorating than theirs, I will say. So I'm going to talk today about my freshman year, which was spent in shipyard at Marine Group Boat Works, my sophomore year, which was spent sailing with Military Sealift Command, and my junior year, which was spent in engineering firm at Crowley Engineering Services. And then hopefully we'll have some time for questions at the end. So my freshman year, I went to San Diego with 2 other women from my class to work at Marine Group Boat Works. So here's a picture from above. It's a smaller yard, mostly for super yachts, smaller Navy vessels, tugboats, and fishing boats. And so just because of the nature of the yard, it's not really made for new build and construction, but as you can see, it's got one of the biggest lifts on the West Coast, so that makes it great for maintenance and repair. So I worked in the mechanics department, and I followed around the head mechanic, Josh, and his apprentice, Matt. And so a lot of the questions I get about shipyard are, what did you do? And really the question is a lot of odd jobs with mechanics. It was something different every day, but kind of more the trend was that we did a lot of engine alignment between the propeller shaft and the engine on motor yachts, sailboats, and a fishing trawler. Propeller shaft removal and installation on motor yachts and sand fishing trawler, shaft seal maintenance, generator installation on a catamaran sailboat, which I'll get back to later. We installed some engines on a tugboat, and then we also spent some time in the prop shop doing propeller refurbishment. So we got to try our hand at tire striping propellers, which is where you polish them until they have stripes on them, like you can see in the picture. That's in the prop shop. And then we also learned how to dynamically balance them, which is where you speed them up to a really high RPM on a very janky rig and see if it's balanced or not. But it's not all serious. We did have a lot of fun in the yard. So what did I learn? Besides welding, brazing, basic safety wiring of bolts, all those handy skills in the shipyard, one day they cleared out a portion of the yard and they taught us how to drive forklifts, so that's fun. And then also on the more of the engineering side, I learned the importance of oversizing machinery hatches. Going back to that generator install on that catamaran, the hatches were way too small, and so instead of using a chain fall to kind of drop it in plane like you would normally, we had to tilt the generator diagonally to drop it down, so that was a lot more hazardous than it needed to be, just because of poor engineering. Also, I learned don't design small maintenance spaces. As you can see on the left, I am in the bilge of this Navy vessel, and it was really quite a tight squeeze to get in there. And so what we were doing is that we were removing the grates of the water jets off of this Navy vessel. So someone had to get in the bilge and hold a wrench on one side, and somebody was on the outside holding an impact. And we had walkie-talkies to talk back and forth while we were taking off all of these bolts. And so better engineering probably would not have saved the fact that we had to use walkie-talkies, but definitely made it easier to get into and out of the bilge, and had the bolts in a much easier to access location. And then I'm a sailor, I'm a big fan of cool sailboats, so here's the pictures of good ones that I saw when I was in the yard. And then you might recognize the one on the right, that is the HMS Surprise, better known for her cameo in Master and Commander, for some of you sailing nerds out there. Yeah, pretty cool. So my sophomore year, I went with 3 other women aboard a ship for Military Sealift Command, and we sailed out of Norfolk, Virginia. I was on the USNS Comfort, which is one of 2 hospital ships that is operated by the Navy and crewed by Military Sealift Command, better known as MSC. She's almost 900 feet long, and she has a complement of 2,500 people. So that includes 1,000 patients, 900 Navy enlisted personnel, 250 officers, 300 medical personnel, and 50 MSC civilian mariners. However, in reserve status, which is what it was when I was there, there's about 15 full-time MSC personnel and about 100 Navy personnel who would come in during the mornings. So here's some of my pictures, and it kind of gives you a better sense of scale for just how large of a ship she is. In the picture on the left, on the right, we have the USNS Patuxent, which was a fuel resupply ship for the aircraft carriers. And that's what 4 other students from my year were on. And then you have Comfort on the left, so she's huge. And so my time on ship was focused on the sophomore year C-term project. So they talked about this a little bit, but it revolves around tracing all of the major ship systems and basically creating a professional engineering report on the ship. So there's a marine engineering section and a naval architecture section. So most of my time was spent in the engine room, as you can see. So Comfort is a steamship, and so you're probably asking yourself, why do we still have a steamship running when we have the advances of the glorious low-speed diesel? And the answer is vibrations. So for a hospital ship with operating rooms, a ship that operates with low vibrations, like steam, is much better than one with diesel. So without being proceed. And so the power plant here, as you can see, delivers about 25,000 horsepower to the shaft. For context, your average car has between 100 and 200, so quite a bit. In the back, we have the boilers. So you can see about 20 feet of them exposed here, but there was another 20 to 30 feet up in the stack, and so there were little staircases that you could get to all the way up, and then there was grading at the bottom, and so you could see all the way down to the bottom of the engine room. So when we did rounds, we had to go up there quite a bit. And then here you have the high-pressure turbine connected to the low-pressure turbine, which is then connected to the reduction gear, which ultimately goes to the propeller shaft. And then here on the left, I've included a picture of the condensate system. So all of the steam that gets produced by the boilers has to get recondensed and then put back into them. So this is where that happens. And so I've done this so that you can see the size of the pipes. So it has a ladder for reference for scale. And so the engineers told me that when the ship started up, the pipes would shake and sometimes have to about a foot of throw before they settled down. So those are just enormous forces and just really incredible engineering. And then on the right, the power generation for the hospital was on a separate grid than the power generation for the rest of the ship. In case one of them failed, you want the hospital to keep going. So we have 3 diesel generators, and those were each about 2,700 horsepower. So those were large. And so though our ship was in reserve status, so we did not actually leave the pier during my sea term because there was no national emergencies requiring medical attention. But if it had sailed, we would not have been allowed to explore the oxygen generation plant, which is on the left here. That was very top secret. We were only allowed in once by the Navy. And then the blood bank on the right, the ICU, the NICU, and then an operating room. So this one was mocked up for Navy medical professionals to practice in. There was 12 of them on board, and after about 1 p.m., the Navy left the ship and we had free reign to go everywhere. So that was awesome. And then so here are some of the drawings that I produced when I was on ship. So on left, we have 2 levels of the engine room for one of my machinery arrangements. And then on the right, we have a schematic. This is 1 page of my 8-page auxiliary steam system. And we did schematics for main steam, auxiliary steam, seawater, feed water and condensate, fuel oil, and lube oil. So you have to go around and you have to find all the valves and all the pipes and write them down in your little notebook and then put them in a CAD. So freshmen and sophomores, you have something to look forward there. And then junior year, I went home to Seattle. I worked at Crowley Engineering Services. And so this is a picture of the Crowley building. I grabbed from one of their promotional videos, so that's why it has Seattle on it. And this was our balcony. So our office took up about half of the floor, and we had a very nice view of the waterfront, so that was nice. So when I was at Crowley, I worked on concept design, weight estimates, and stability analyses. I was also working on making a database of information for their tugboat designs, so that's what I was doing here. I was going in their archives, pulling different information from different drawings, and ultimately using it to populate this database for them. This was one of the projects I worked on. This here is a fireboat that Crowley delivered to the San Francisco Fire Department in 2017. And when I was there, the San Francisco Fire Department called up Crowley and were like, I would like another please, but bigger and faster. So I worked to modify the hull form that they already had and did some initial resistance and powering calculations to see how much bigger the power plant would need to be And I think in our final report, it ended up being something like to get another 3 knots of speed for the whole form they wanted, they would need double the size of the power plant. So I don't know what they ended up doing, but I think that was an interesting figure. Here's another project that I was working on. Crowley has an offshore wind sector. And so as you can see on the left, they already had some barges and they were using them to transport these wind turbines out to sea to install. But Crowley, the offshore wind sector, was working on a new design for a larger wind turbine that would not fit on any of the barges that they already had. And so we got to work on a new barge design to carry the larger turbine offshore. And so we worked on initial design for the barges, ran some initial stability calculations, and ran some calculations to see if it would pass regulations in different sea states. So I think it was going well when I left, but it was very early stages. And then Crowley also has a large fleet of tugboats because they're a shipping company. So about half of them are based in Seattle, and about half of them are based in Los Angeles and San Diego. And the dispatch office is located at the main office in Seattle. And so we got to spend an afternoon with the dispatchers and listen to them coordinate the tugboats bringing ships into port. We also got to go on a tugboat at the end of my internship and watch them complete a job bringing a container ship off the dock. So on the left you can see the Crowley Artemis, which is the tugboat I went on, and then the engine room on the right. So this is very helpful for my SV1 project, which was a tugboat, so I took lots of notes. And then at the end of that, I got to drive the tugboat. So that was really fun. Any questions?
I have a question here.
I forgot.
What are you hoping to do for your next rotation?
Pardon?
What are you hoping to do for your next rotation?
I would love to go to Boston in Seattle. It's another engineering firm, and they're focused on small vessel design. Thank you so much.